Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, Reducing the Risk, Part 1. I am Alicia Nottingham, Assistant Library Conservator at the Preservation and Conservation Laboratory, Heritage Library Division, NALIS. We ask that you keep your cameras off and your mics muted. You are invited to type your questions into the chat for the question and answer segment at the end of this webinar. Let me introduce my co-facilitator, Danielle Fraser. Since 2009, Danielle has been the Library Conservator and head of the PAC Lab. Danielle holds a Master's of Science in Information Studies and a Certificate of Advanced Studies in Conservation of Library and Archival Materials from the University of Texas at Austin. She was a 2008 Fellow of the Library of Congress, Washington, D.C. She has been a member of the American Institute for Conservation and Library Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Danielle enjoyed presentations at regional associations. Sorry, let me restate that. Danielle enjoyed presenting papers at the annual meetings of regional associations at Carroll and Akiro. Now I hand her over to you, Danielle.
Thank you, Alicia. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get into our topic, let me introduce our organization. The National Library and Information System Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, NALIS, is the country's coordinator of all library and information services. Beyond the Heritage Library, there are over 25 public libraries, 3 libraries in correctional institutions, libraries in secondary and primary schools, and special libraries in several government agencies, all administered by NALIS. Please visit our website, www.nalis.gov.tt, for more information about our services. We'll post the link in the chat of this webinar. One of NALIS's key responsibilities is to promote and preserve national heritage information. Though the National Library has a comprehensive collection of paper-based items and electronic audiovisual media, there is particular emphasis on materials with national and Caribbean origin, focus, and authorship. The Heritage Library Division, located on the 2nd floor of the National Library building, Port of Spain, Trinidad, helps NALIS fulfill the goal of acquiring, promoting, and preserving national heritage information. I invite you to follow the Heritage Library Division on Facebook at NALIS HLDTT. See the link in the chat. Special collections acquired or donated to the Heritage Library Division consist of mainly traditional library items created by or of interest to a significant person or organization of Trinidad and Tobago. One would not be surprised to find within these collections books, newspapers, pamphlets, letters, photographs, film, and audio recordings, as well as memorabilia like the typewriter you see here. The Preservation and Conservation Laboratory is responsible for ensuring the overall longevity of library materials, with attention to the Heritage Library Division and its collection of historical importance. The PAC Lab, which was officially commissioned in 2013, helps NALIS fulfill its role as the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, Preservation and Conservation, or IFLA PAC, Regional Center for the English-Speaking Caribbean. Additionally, This arm of the Heritage Library Division advises public and private organizations on the care of their collections and artifacts. The PAC Lab has been serving the preservation and conservation needs of clients through fumigation, freeze drying, conservation treatments, collection repair, bindery services, disaster recovery, technical assistance, and preservation training. We miss carrying out our preservation clinics, tours, and training sessions in person. However, we are happy that technology allows us to continue this mission through our preservation webinar series. In case you missed any of our previous webinars, the link to the YouTube playlist on the NALIS channel is posted in the chat. Let me formally introduce my co-facilitator, Alicia Nottingham. Alicia started as a conservation technician in 2010 and was then promoted to assistant library conservator in 2015. She holds a certificate in social work from the University of the West Indies and continues a diploma in project management at Reutech. With her training in the PAC Lab, Alicia has carried out conservation treatment on several items, including items from the Constantine and Ho Choi collections. Alicia also assisted with conducting tours and outreach events, as well as educating NALIS's returning scholars and new staff about the activities that are conducted in the lab. The floor is yours, Alicia.
Thank you, Danielle. Welcome again, everyone. As we think of reducing the risk of damage to our library and archival collections, we must first know exactly what puts them at risk. So we will start part one of this series, reducing the risk with risk assessment. My apologies for my backup video. We will begin by identifying different types of hazards and agents of deterioration which can damage our collections. Next, we will introduce to you methods of assessing risks. We'll look at the types of risk and a few of the available tools for assessing risk of cultural heritage collections. So let's begin. Though we often use hazards and risk interchangeably, there is a very meaningful difference. A hazard is anything that has the potential to cause harm or have a negative impact. Risk is the likelihood that a hazard will cause harm or damage. In this graphic from EUFIC's website, they use the example of something we have probably all done at some point, crossing the road. When crossing a road, cars are a hazard. The potential of harm associated with this hazard varies according to the scenario. When crossing a busy highway, the risk of an accident is high, whereas when crossing a country road, the risk of an accident is low. So various factors can influence the degree or likelihood of the harm or damage. These factors can be called risk factors. So let's see how well we understand this concept. Here is our first poll question. Which of the following is a hazard? Is it A, gasoline, or B, lighting a match near gasoline? Okay. Okay. I see 67% lighting a match near gasoline. Gasoline is the hazard. it is a flammable substance that has the potential to cause harm. On the other hand, lighting a match near gasoline is very risky behavior, as it increases the likelihood of that the hazard, which is gasoline, will cause harm like an explosion or fire. One more before we move on. Here's another poll. Which of the following is a hazard? Texting while driving a car, which is A, or B, driving a car. Make your choice in the poll. Which is the hazard? Let's see what your answer would be. Okay. I see here, driving a car, 55%, the majority said driving a car. The correct answer, driving is the hazard. It has the potential to cause harm. However, texting while driving increases the likelihood that the hazard will cause harm, like a traffic accident, so it's risky activity. With these everyday activities, we understand the risks and take action to avoid these hazards, these risky hazards. Since we understand the risks, we try to take actions that to avoid making these hazards risky. Hazards can be grouped in several ways and sometimes depend on the field of studying the hazards. I like this general one, where hazards are classified as natural, anthropogenic, technological, or any combination. Hazards are the result of naturally occurring processes on our planet, Earth, which have a negative effect on living things and the environment. For example, geological hazards like earthquakes and volcanoes, and meteorological hazards like hurricanes and droughts. Anthropogenic hazards occur because of human action. This can be terrorism or aviation, for example. Technological hazards occur due to technological developments. This can include exposure to coal dust, asbestos, and acid rain, just to name a few. When these hazards occur on a large and widespread scale and result in loss of life, limb, or buildings, the result is a disaster. We'll look more at disasters in another part of this Reducing the Risk series. The hazards that can affect our library and archival collections can be grouped into agents of deterioration. As we have said in some of our previous webinars, we can think of preservation as understanding the 10 agents of deterioration as the primary threats or hazards to our collections and taking steps to avoid, block, detect, and respond to the damage they cause. This is the basis to reducing the risk. The Agents of Deterioration framework was developed by the Canadian Conservation Institute, CCI, in the 1990s and has been widely adopted and expanded. The 10 agents of deterioration are physical forces, fire, water, criminals, pests, pollutants, and/or contaminants, light and UV, incorrect temperature, incorrect humidity, and neglect and disassociation. Each agent is a grouping of hazards which can impact cultural heritage collections. Each can bring different levels of risks to our collections. Can you identify which one of these agents of deterioration are physical forces? Is it A, an earthquake causing toppling of collections resulting in breakage, or B, someone accidentally dropping a book and damaging the binding, or C, a pamphlet shelved poorly and becoming distorted over time, or D, all of the above? Okay, let's see what the polling results are. I see 86% said all of the above. That is the correct answer. All of the above, yes, that's correct. All of these examples are physical forces as the agent of deterioration. What varies is the frequency and the impact of the hazard. An earthquake can be severe and may impact all of the collections, but most times is infrequent. A book accidentally dropped is less severe, but might happen more frequently based on how often the collection is used. The distortion to the pamphlet, which happens over a period of time, may be least damaging. Now I hand over to you, Danielle.
Thank you, Alicia. Now, there's one thing I want you to note as it relates to thinking of these agents of deterioration. The damage and loss will only occur if our collection items are both susceptible and exposed to the agent of deterioration. That's when the item will be affected. We've adapted the graphic from ICROM's Guide to Risk Management of Cultural Heritage. So if we think of the gray rectangle, that's the largest one on the screen, as our entire heritage collection, everything that we have. The blue rectangle is the part of the collection that is susceptible to a certain agent of deterioration. Some of the collection is exposed to the agent of deterioration, and that is represented by the red rectangle, exposed. But it's the items that are in the overlapping purple area that are affected because they are both susceptible and exposed to the agent of deterioration. The example I like to give is one like this. Think of a metal sculpture, and perhaps it's one that you have on the outside of your building representing some iconic artwork, etc. It is part of your collection and it's exposed to the agent of light and UV. But metal is not susceptible to light and UV. So therefore, it's not going to be in this affected part. It will just simply be only exposed to the agent of deterioration. Let's think of another one. Let's say you have a wooden building that's a part of your library and archival collections. Wood is susceptible to termites, right? So it's going to be in the blue area. However, because you have actually treated the building and treated the soil around the building for termites, the building is not going to be affected because it's not going to get exposed to termites. So we sort of understand that yes, a collection item could be susceptible to a particular agent of deterioration, but it has to actually be exposed to that agent of deterioration in order to be affected or damaged. And that's the thinking we have to think of when we are looking at how are our collections going to be affected by the agents. Are they susceptible and are they going to be exposed? Now, most approaches to risk assessment for cultural heritage collections seeks to answer these three questions. One, what might happen? Which hazard or agent of deterioration has the likelihood of affecting or damaging the collection? Two, how likely is that? What is the chance or possibility of it actually happening? What will be the frequency of this occurrence? Is it something that happens often or is it very rare? And three, what will be the consequences? What is the expected impact on the collection should this hazard occur, should this agent of deterioration occur? And how severe will the harm be? Now, the framework of the agents of deterioration forms the basis of several risk assessment tools developed for cultural heritage collections. You should choose the one that works best for you. And here are just a couple. One tool is a cultural property risk assessment, risk analysis method, or CPRAM. It was developed by Robert Waller while Chief of Conservation at the Canadian Museum of Nature. The ABC method was developed following years of a 3-week course offered by ICROM in collaboration with the Canadian Conservation Institute. QuickScan, my apologies, QuickScan was developed by conservation scientists at the Cultural Heritage Agency of the Netherlands and the British Museum. Links to all these tools are included in the webinar resources, which we will share at the end. However, we are going to take a more detailed look at the Risk Evaluation and Planning Program, or REPP, which was originally developed by Heritage Preservation with support from an Institute of Museum and Library Services National Leadership Grant. It is now available as a resource from the Foundation of Advancement in Conservation, or FAIC. Let me take you directly to the website. Permit me to change screens here. So I'm showing you the website, and again, all of these resources are going to be in our webinar resources document, which we'll share at the end. But the Risk Evaluation and Planning Program is listed as a resource for emergencies under the Foundation for Advancement in Conservation website. All of the resources are available freely as files that you are able to download and open. Now, there's one that we're going to work our way through. There's one in particular that I'm very interested in showing you. I want you to note that they've authorized that you're able to reproduce any portion of this if you're using it for non-commercial purposes only, and you ought not to modify it in any way. So we're using it directly from the website, as is, for the purpose of us educating you and letting you know, and then you are free to use it for your own personal purposes in helping your organization. So this is the REP walkthrough checklist. It draws your attention to key conditions which increase the vulnerability of your organization. Now, how often have you considered some of these scenarios for your library or your archive? I want you to think of your own collection as you answer the following selections. And I want you to actually keep track of how many yeses and nos, because we're going to tally them at the end. Now, we're just going to select a few questions just to get you thinking, because this is actually a 13-page document that you can go through in detail on your own, and I recommend you doing that. But just to give you a sense of how it works, let's go through a couple of them right now. So let's take a look at A3. Are branches trimmed away from your windows and your skylights that you may have in your roof? You are noting for yourself, is this a yes or no? Are branches trimmed away from windows and skylights? What's going to be your answer for number A6? Are the grounds clear of accumulation of combustible material? Right, so we're thinking of the grounds, the area around our building. What's going on there? Do you have things that are able to create a fire, to be near to your buildings or on your grounds, etc.? Is that a yes or no? Thinking of your own location. And then what about A7? Are the grounds surrounded by a fence of appropriate height? And so we're looking at that aspect of security. Is your fence of an appropriate height, or is it too short and allows anyone to come around? You're thinking yes or no. Right, take a note. Let's go on to the next question. And do you actually know what is the response time for fire, medical, and police services? Do you actually know what's that response time of fire and medical police services to your institution? You're going to answer yes or no. Remember, we're tracking all our yeses and nos in this case. Let's look at B7. Do local emergency services conduct annual walkthroughs or inspections on the grounds and buildings? Do you have them regularly coming on an annual basis and walking through and inspecting your grounds and your buildings for emergency issues? Is that yes or no? There's a section on insurance and construction projects, but I'm skipping ahead. I want to get to another section here, but also you're looking at staff responsibilities and training as well. Several questions to help you take a look at that. But in this section F, institutional policies, have you ever considered that your institutional policies and practices actually do have an effect on the preventative preservation of your collections? Let's consider F3. Does your institution have a policy, whether it's written or unwritten, with respect to, let's say, food and drink, right? We know that having food and drink on a compound could make you at risk for infestations, etc. So does your institution have a policy, written or unwritten, with respect to food and drink? Is that yes or no? What about, just want to think about, if items are going in and out, do you have incoming, outgoing, right? Look at G, best practices. It helps you to focus on some of the best practices as they relate to risk management and emergency preparedness. And I want to go to section H, which actually deals with the building exterior. So there are a number of things that we may not be very aware of as it relates to our building. So the question I want you to think of is H1. Is the building exterior well lighted? Do you have proper lighting on the outside of your building? Is that yes or no? You know that that's going to be something that reduces the likelihood of a break-in. Answer for H2. Are there locks on windows and doors? Do you have proper locks on those windows and doors? Is your answer yes or no for that? And another aspect of the building, moving away from that security aspect, on the building exterior, is the roof covering sound, as in it doesn't have buckling, bubbles, leaks, cracks, or standing water? Is your roof sound? Is that yes or no? What about H7? Is roof and overhang flashing or the caulking intact? Those things that are sealed in order to direct the water where it should go. Are those things intact? Yes or no? Thinking of your building. And as it begins raining here, think of, is your drainage system directed away from the building footings? So at your location, when it rains, is the drainage set up in a way that it directs the water away from the building? And the last one in this section I want to think of, does the building comply with fire codes? Yes or no? Does your building that you have your heritage collection stored in, is that a building that complies with fire codes? Yes or no? And now we look at the interior of the building. And there's just one of them that I really want to consider here. Are environmental conditions monitored? Is this yes or no? Are the environmental conditions monitored in your building? How about this question here? Ranges, herds, exhausts, ducts from restaurants and eating areas, are those professionally cleaned at least every 2 months to ensure that you do not put yourself at risk of a fire from those exhausts? Now, section J deals with collection, storage, and exhibition areas. And the first one I want to look at here to have you consider, remember you're thinking of your own institution and you're tallying all of your yeses and nos, are shelving and other storage furniture 4 to 6 inches off the floor? Remember, just being those 4 or 6 inches off the floor can actually help reduce the risk of water damage following a leak. So can you answer yes or no for all of the shelving and the other storage furniture in your location? Are they 4 to 6 inches off the floor? And what about this one? J8. Are priority collections stored away from your windows? Yes or no? You're tallying your answers together. Are priority collections stored away from windows? So those collections that are of importance to your institution, are they stored away from windows? Now let's go down to K9. Sorry, K section deals with fire safety. And the first one I'd like you to take a look at would be K2. Are detection systems tested regularly, at least semi-annually? At least twice a year, are your detection systems tested regularly to ensure that those are functioning? Do you say yes or no here? Here's another one. K13 says, are portable fire extinguishers in proper locations? Yes or no? Those portable fire extinguishers, usually they're red, they're hanging on a wall. Are those in the proper locations? Are they properly marked, etc., tagged? Are those in their proper locations? Yes or no? And I want you to take a look at this one here. K17 is a space of at least 18 inches kept between sprinklers and materials. So the sprinklers that you may have in the ceiling, do you have a space of at least 18 inches from the sprinkler down to where your materials are stored? Is this yes or no? And looking at L, protection from water damage, I want you to consider L2. Are all of your pipes and plumbing free of leaks? Do you have any known leaks in your pipe or plumbing? Are they free of leaks? Yes or no? So if they're free of leaks, yes. But if you know that you have leaks in your pipes and plumbing, it's going to be no. And the last one that we'll take a look at in exploring this, and this is actually a really important one. I've seen it play a big role in disaster preparedness, would be L11. Do you know where the water main is and how to turn it off? Do you or your staff know where the water main is and how to turn it off? A lot of times it's not in your typical location where it might be for residential property. In buildings, commercial buildings, public buildings, those things tend to be hidden so that members of the public can't access them very easily. So therefore, do your staff know where the main is and how to turn it off? Should they have an emergency and the water is spilling everywhere, a pipe is broken suddenly, and they have to turn off the main? Is that a yes or no? Now you would have answered 20 questions, and that's just 20 questions of this entire 13-page document. We're not going to go through all of them, but I do encourage you to take a look through them. What I want you to do right now would be to tally your responses and enter the amount in our poll. So the poll question goes, how many yes responses do you have after doing this walkthrough? Do you have all 20 are saying yes? Do you have 15 to 19 yeses, 10 to 15, 5 to 10, or less than 5? How many yes responses do you have? Anyone with getting full 20, all the yeses? Or do you have all the way down to less than 5? You're answering, you're putting in your tally in the poll that's up. We went through 20 questions. So just how many of them did you get yeses for? Great. And we're sharing the results. And we see here that the majority of us got 10 to 15 yeses out of 20. But there are a few who would have gotten higher than that, 15 to 19 or 5 to 10. Now this gives you a quick snapshot of the vulnerability of your organization. And I encourage each of you to download this walkthrough checklist and try it out for your institution. Now there's one more resource from the REP program that I'm going to share. Now what you see on screen is a risk prioritization worksheet. It's an Excel spreadsheet. And just again to note that there is the authorization for using this for non-commercial purposes, that it should not be modified, etc. And I want to go through what the key of the worksheet is. How exactly do you use this worksheet? So in the first column, you enter the likelihood of an occurrence. 1 would be that it's not likely, all the way up to 5, that it's very likely. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 5. And then so for severity of damage, we can enter 1, meaning no damage, all the way up to 5, which means very severe damage, resulting in total loss, indefinite closure of the institution, etc. So sometimes you may have severe damage where we require outside services or vendors. We have to temporarily suspend our operations. There may be significant monetary investment, and then moderate damage where it's requiring extra labor. We may temporarily suspend our operations before we could return to the fullest. And there could be slight damage where there might be minor damage just requiring in-house activities in order to clean up or repair it, and our operations still continue, or 1 being no damage. And we get to see what would be the risk rating. What it does is that it automatically multiplies likelihood of occurrence to severity of damage to give you a risk rating. And so if you have a rating 16 to 25, it would be extremely high. So it's going to be colored red. Ratings that are 6 to 15 are low, and ratings that are 1 to 5 will be green. So I'd like you to help me do this sheet, right? You're following along as I actually carry this out. I selected a few that I wanted to touch on just to show you and illustrate how this Excel spreadsheet works, this risk prioritization worksheet works. So for earthquake, I'm going to suppose that this is a library here in Trinidad and Tobago. We have had earthquakes relatively often. It's not that it's happening very frequently, but I would say we can rate this at 4, right? There is the likelihood of us having an earthquake because we sit on, a fault line, one that does continue to be relatively active as it relates to the Caribbean basin. And the damage that happens could easily be one that would stop us from having operations completely damaged to property, etc. So I would put that up as a 5. And once I enter my number, you see here that the worksheet automatically multiplies the 2 and color codes the response. So at a glance, I could see that this particular hazard has an extremely high rating. Let's do snow. The likelihood of snow in Trinidad remains a no, so putting that as 1. But if we were to have snow occur, that would be something that may be very damaging to us here. So we could say, our roofs aren't made for snow, our roads aren't made for snow, windows, etc. So if that were to happen, it would be pretty bad. But because the likelihood of that is down to not likely, not at all likely to happen, this risk rating remains at green, right? Very low. Let's do hurricanes. The Caribbean region, the Atlantic Caribbean region, remains one that's part of the active hurricane zone. The season runs and would have started at the beginning of June. So yes, there is the likelihood of us having a hurricane. However, I'm going to put it at 4 in the sense that Trinidad and Tobago remains just a little way south of what's considered the hurricane belt, where you would have storm after storm happening on a regular basis. So there's a likelihood. So I'm putting it not at 5, but a little bit at 4. But if we were to have a hurricane occur, the level of damage that happens just simply when we have rain going on, we could tell that that's going to be extremely high. So I'm putting that at 5. So you see here what it automatically did. Let's do one more in this category. If we had wind damage from trees, so I'm thinking to the National Library building in Port of Spain, there are not a lot of trees around the building that are taller than the building. The building is at least 7 stories tall. So there aren't many trees around, but there are just a few. So there is the likelihood of that occurring. I'm going to put it at 2. And should one of those very small trees get uprooted or be blown into the building, the damage may happen just to the lower floors, perhaps not necessarily as damaging. So I'm going to rest this severity of damage at 3. So this is one that ends up being a bit more yellow. Here's one that we could probably relate to: frequent or major interruption of utility services, power, gas, water, phone, cable, etc. In a lot of our Caribbean countries, there might be interruptions that happen relatively frequently. So we could probably put this at about 3. And should we lose power, what level of damage does that bring to our collection or our library building, etc.? Should we lose water, have a major interruption? May not be as damaging water-wise, but using electricity does mean that those environmental control equipment that we have in place to continue with our air handling units, etc., will not be able to function. So we may end up with some level of damage when those environmental things go offline. So I'll put it at 4. And one more to consider, vandalism. Vandalism, though, is the one that is ranked as criminal activity. And vandalism, though, can include not only someone stealing an item, but also someone defacing or damaging a collection item on purpose, for the purpose of just simply damaging, not damaging through use, but damaging for that intent of harm. So is there the likelihood of that happening? I'm thinking of us at the Heritage Library Division. We do have cameras available in our areas where the members of the public are. They are monitored by library staff who watch them accessing the materials. There's also nearby security on patrol, etc. So I'm not saying that it's completely not likely, but it's a little bit more difficult for it to happen. So I'm going to put it at a 2. But should somebody go with that intent of damaging or stealing an item, that could hit us in a way that's relatively impactful. So I'm going to put that severity as 3. And what about our collection storage areas? Is there the possibility of the shelf failure? So we'll put that at a 2, just for the fact that we have a lot of newer shelving in the past few decades. We have that steel-coated or anodized aluminum, very strong shelving. Failure aspect is one that has hardly happened. Not that it's not possible, so I'm putting it as low as a 2. And should you have shelves failing and items toppling down on them, the level of damage is one where we can still operate. It may mean, yes, in-house we can do some level of repairs, move the items away, check them, etc. So that one's relatively low. We have had, and I'm sure several institutions have probably had the incidents of leaks or breaks in pipes, etc. So that's something that I would put a little bit higher at 3. And should you have a leak, it's something that can cause quite a lot of damage, where we may have to isolate an area, get external to knowledge staff to assist us with getting the water mopped up safely, etc., getting the items dried. Some of the items may take some conservation treatment. So I'm going to put that as a 4. And mold and mildew, being in the Caribbean, it's something that occurs relatively often, just because those conditions tend to be right for us, the higher temperature and the higher humidity. I encourage you to check out our webinar dealing with mold that goes into a bit more detail there. But I'm going to put that as something as a 5. And when we do have mold occurring, the damage that goes on with the collection, though, not to say that we have mold where the mold completely eats through the entire binding or the pages of the book, etc. But you do have mold that could become a hazard to those working with the materials, etc. So I'll put that as a 4. And so we can glance through this document. Imagine if we had gone through each line, but we're not going to do that. You can see at a glance the ones that are going to be low risk, they're colored green. The ones that have a medium level risk are colored yellow, and the ones that are high risk are colored red. So immediately it can give you that sort of feedback on the areas that are at risk as it relates to your collection, and be able to prioritize where you're going to put in the efforts, etc. I do like this document for that purpose. So permit me to get back to our shared screen. And I thank all of you for attending our webinar. Feel free to put your questions into the chat or to email us. We will also add to the chat a list of resources for assessing the risk of damage to your collections. You'll also receive today an email with a brief survey. Your feedback is important to us. We look forward to your responses. Be sure to register for our upcoming webinars. Our next Family Heirloom Preservation Clinic on Wednesday, June 30th at 1 p.m. local time focuses on the care and storage of optical discs, namely compact discs or CDs and digital video discs or DVDs. We may have a lot of CDs and DVDs in our collections as backups or as the original place for digital content. So this may be an interesting webinar to attend if you do have a number of those in your collection. And also, we have our anniversary special. I'm so excited to invite you to join us on July 14th at 1 p.m. local time. Join PAC staff for a commemorative look back at events and activities since the commissioning of the lab in 2013. And the registration links for both of these are going to be in the chat. And we look forward to you joining with us and celebrating with us in July for our anniversary. So now we go to our questions. Any questions, and we'll be sure to get to them. Great, I think we have covered all the questions. Alicia, do we have any questions at this time?
I'm not seeing any so far. No questions.
Okay, great. Just making sure.
I was just making sure myself to not miss any questions, but we don't have any questions.
Okay. Just saw one come in. One person giving a comment from Walker. I live near a large 8-story library building. It has some broken windows in a bad hurricane years ago, even all the way up on the 8th floor. Unfortunately, there was a one-of-a-kind glass sculpture displayed near one of the windows that was not moved or protected before the storm, and it was destroyed when the window broke. So think about other things besides books, of course. Definitely looking at library and archival collections here, but when we say collections, we're talking about all of them, because a lot of times our collections do end up being a mix of items, not just library and archival. So thank you so much for that consideration. We are continuing this series, Reducing the Risk. Further on, it's going to be a multi-part series. So in this one, we were looking particularly just at how do we go about assessing the risk and sort of opening our eyes up to where are those areas. I heard someone say this sounds like a Mr. Bean episode of all the things that could possibly go wrong. And yes, you almost have to put yourself in one of those episodes and think, what are some of the things that can actually be a hazard? And what's the likelihood of that happening? And if there's any likelihood at all, you ought to take note of that. And then you can begin prioritizing as you've assessed the risk, prioritizing and making those decisions as to how do we go about mitigating the risk. So mitigating the risk is going to be one of the things that we do in another part of this series. But right now, in this first part, we were looking at assessing the risk. So we're going to get there with respect to mitigating the risk and then looking further at disaster preparedness.
There's
a question here that says
Diaz.
Files must go through a quarantine period before being part of an archive. And that's actually a really good question. Thank you so much for that. It is recommended that any materials that are coming into your collection from a source that's external to your own collection ought to be quarantined. They ought to be quarantined for a period of time. And if you can possibly treat them for insect presence, that's also something that's recommended. In one of our past webinars, we looked at insects as an agent of deterioration and spoke a little bit of some of the things that you can do in order to prevent the presence of insects. But yes, it's recommended. And that's a typical thing that's done with most collections, that you do quarantine, ensure that the item doesn't have any issues or problems that you would introduce to your larger collection. So by quarantining and leaving them separate and aside, that ensures that those issues can be taken care of and handled before introducing them to your larger collection. One aspect about quarantining, and I know we do have COVID-19 as part of our consideration now. So when we think of quarantine, we speak about it in a more general way. We're all aware about it now following the pandemic. Materials are possible. It is possible for materials to actually carry on them remnants of the virus, etc. So quarantining for a period of time is also something that is recommended. So those are some of the things to consider.
There's one from Eva Nelson. She says that she works in a library and she has never seen a note or noticed any sprinklers. Is that a risk?
Now, Eva, thank you so much for that question. You haven't seen those sprinklers. I think that is something that would put your collections at risk. If not sprinklers, because maybe the space might be too small for installing that, there ought to be those fire extinguishers quickly accessible in that space within the library at different points. As it relates to fire codes at your particular location, there are national fire codes depending on the country as it relates to what you should have in place. So someone who has that expertise on fire safety can give that level of guidance. Typically, when you do have a walkthrough with either occupational health and safety, OSH, individuals, they have that training and that knowledge, and they're able to give that level of advice. So they may walk through and notice that there are certain things as it relates to fire safety that are not in place, and they can advise that. But definitely, those are some of the things that are listed in the questions there. Sprinklers, we want them in a library. We want some sort of mechanism of stopping a fire should it happen, as well as a way of indicating to us, notifying us when a fire occurs. So fire alarms are also important. And then ways for us to stop that fire. So fire prevention, fire notification, as well as fire stopping. So all of those things has to be part of your fire safety efforts at any location, not just for the safety of the library collection, but also for the safety of staff and people who are using the space. I think those are things that you want to consider.
Andres Diaz, he has a two-part question. For movement of collections between museums or archives, what kind of security is necessary? And he also wants to know if it's necessary to separate film from photographs or from books that are in the same room.
Thank you so much for those questions. Those are some really good questions. As it relates to security, for moving collections between locations, that's always something that you would want to consider and have in place. The security, though, with securing an item for movement would be two-part. You're looking at, and I'm just going to give you a quick summary here. You're looking at securing it against any sort of physical damage while it's being transported. So those items should be secured in books, in boxes, in carrying containers, etc., ensuring that as they are moving, that you wouldn't encounter any physical damage from whoever is transporting them. And then, of course, you would want to ensure that you have security so that those items are not stolen, so that they do not undergo vandalism of any sort. And I am immediately noting to myself that one of the major things, even for us moving items within departments, we want to ensure that we have inventories going along with them. So to ensure that the items that would have left one location are exactly the items that are reaching to another location. We have various checklists so that one person would sign as receiving to take it from one location, and then another person receives it as being the one getting it handed over to them. So you have those checks and balances that you can actually go back and check and see where were those items in their journey from one location to the other, that you have those signed receipt forms from one location to the other. You know exactly who was handling them, who was responsible for moving them, etc. So those are just some of the things to consider as it relates to security. Just to quickly answer your question on photographs being separate to books that are in the same room, sometimes it may not be possible. It's possible that maybe the books or the film, they're all part of the same collection, in the sense of they may have been part of one single unit, archival unit or collection unit that was donated, etc. However, typically, because a lot of times our storage might be fitted for the type of material, we do tend to separate one thing from the other and separate the books. So you have shelves that are adequate for storing books, and then you have shelves that are adequate for storing film, for storing photographs, etc., containers and enclosures for storing those items. So because the storage needs are a bit different from one material to the other, they may not be able to be shelved directly with each other. The concern about them being shelved in the same room is really one that is of importance when you consider that photographs do need cooler and drier conditions than books would need to be comfortable. I'm not going to get into the exact details because we did have a webinar on the care of photographs, and I recommend you taking a look back at that as it relates to the temperature that's needed. So if you find that it's easier to provide cold storage for film or for negatives or something like that in a smaller capacity than trying to make the entire room a cold storage, right? So a lot of times you find that institutions would have separated their photographic collections just based on the environmental storage needs, as in it was easier to separate them and have them stored under those particular storage conditions rather than keeping them in an entire room with books and other materials and trying to bring down the storage there. So that tends to be the consideration, but it's not necessarily that one material is affecting the other just by being in the same room per se, but just that it may be either the physical enclosure needs, protective enclosure needs, or the environmental storage needs may be different for the two types of materials. I see a question from Rebecca Alexander. Are there situations where items may be a risk onto themselves? This may be because of the material they are made of. And Rebecca, that's an excellent question. One which you've actually answered exactly right there. Materials, collection items, let me say collection items, can actually have within them something that's called an inherent vice, an inherent risk. We could put it like that. They have within them, because of the material that they're made of, their content, their compounds, that they in of themselves could be damaging. One example that we do actually have a lot of in a lot of our library and archival collections would be newsprint. Newsprint in of itself was made typically as a very cheap material, one that you would read today's news and discard of it. So no big investment was put into the paper quality for newsprint. So you find that newsprint has in of itself, just because of how it's made, a lot of acidic materials that can actually cause deterioration of the paper fibers. So newsprint in of itself ends up decaying and deteriorating faster than other papers being stored in the same exact conditions. One type of film that's no longer used would be cellulose nitrate film, would have been used for video, photos, etc. In an earlier part in the 1900s. And that film, just because of how it was made, it did not need to be ignited. It in of itself was flammable. So it would actually ignite in cases. Because of it setting on fire in movie houses and in theaters, there was actually the move internationally to ban the production of that film and to move everyone to using cellulose acetate or to using polyester film, which we'll call safe films. So nitrate film in of itself has that capacity of actually setting off huge fires, because people may not know the difference between nitrate film and what is a safe film. It doesn't need high temperatures, it doesn't need a spark, it doesn't need a match to set it off. It in of itself, just because of what is in it, and as it decays, it in of itself can actually create that fire, and then it becomes extremely hard to out the fire because it's channeling itself. It's not that the fire needs to have something to burn, it is burning in the nitrate itself. So we've actually had a number of historical fires going off in locations. You need professionals to come and actually take the nitrate film and move it to a safe location and dispose of it in a safe way. But those are two examples that come to mind immediately of materials having an inherent vice, is one of the terms that we put for it. Something that is just intrinsic to how they are made that causes them to deteriorate a lot faster than, say, being at risk for anything on the outside. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for that question. And yes, A Walker is agreeing with me that there have been huge fires in nitrate film storage facilities. Thankfully, I've never witnessed one, but in seeing the videos of someone burning nitrate film, just a very little bit can actually create quite an immense fire. So I could just imagine some of the larger nitrate film in a storage facility. Yeah, that would be quite a big risk just in of itself. Thank you so much. Great. So we have come to the end of our questions. I do thank everyone for your contribution. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your great questions. Thank you for following along. And I do encourage you to take a look at the webinar. Take a look at the webinar. I think Alicia is going to post it in the chat. Alicia, go ahead and post the PDF of the webinar resources. But even so, I will send it as an email to everyone who would have been registered for the webinar, again, so that you can access it in that way. Thank you so very much for attending. Again, I hope you join us for when we take a look at CDs and DVDs coming June 30th. We'll take a look at that in our next Family Heirloom Preservation Clinic. And I hope you join us for our celebration of our anniversary in July, on July 14th. We'll be looking back at the events and activities since our commissioning of the lab. We thank you so very much, everyone. Do have a good afternoon.